I think there comes a time in everyone's life where we're forced to ponder, how does Joe Hildebrand have a job? I mean, I don't want to come off sounding mean-spirited here, but how do you make a living off of being a personality when you don't have a personality? Politics aside, which is very easy when it comes to Joe because his views aren't even worth considering. They're usually just a standard Murdoch attack piece dressed in sad attempts at wit and pointless nuance. But Chris Pine, Tony Abbott, Andrew Bolt, they all seem like dudes who know how to get the party started, right? Joe seems like he'd be peering at that party from the bushes. He seems like if any of those three found him, they'd give him a wedgie and he'd make some joke about enjoying the wedgie, even though he clearly doesn't. Anyway, I was thinking about this as I frequently do because my favourite show on earth is Studio 10. I live for those audience shots of 12 people they seem to be bussing in for day trips from nursing homes, and I wonder, why do they bother? Just don't have an audience. It's sadder that you do. You don't want to highlight the fact that your show is so unpopular, you can barely coax more people into the room than you have panellists.
They're like groupies, except they...
I think we got it.
While mulling over this, it suddenly hit me, hang on, I know why he's employed. So I sent him a message. Again, I wasn't trying to be mean here. This was a genuine question. I just wanted to know how he deals with the stark reality that is his life. I asked him, is it weird knowing that a big reason you're on TV is your tiny bit below average intelligence? Now to contextualise this, you know how Stephen Fry sees himself as a shadow of Oscar Wilde? I think Joe Hildebrand sees himself as a shadow of Stephen Fry, except he's on Studio 10. So to say he's a bootleg version of a bootleg version would be too much of a euphemism to be anywhere near the truth. But that's how I imagine he sees himself. Witty, razor sharp, and quirky. All verifiably delusions. As he responds to my question within seconds because he's definitely not a slave to dopamine with, you misspelt your and forgot to spell ah. Well, look at the positives, Joe. Maybe one day you'll wind up on a YouTube compilation entitled World's Greatest Own Goals, volume 212. For one, if someone accuses you of possessing an intelligence that's a tiny bit below average, what does correcting spelling and grammar prove? There's 11-year-olds that are very good at spelling and grammar. There's fully grown geniuses that aren't. What would be more of an indication of someone's intelligence is if you're smugly attempting to correct grammar in a sentence that's grammatically correct. The "you're" is possessive. My editor Connor, when he first saw this tweet, said, "Surely you've edited this. This can't be real." It is. Now I know this is extremely petty, but I think that we could all agree it is far outweighed by the sadness of that response. And don't worry. Like with everything when it comes to Joe, there's a whole level of sadness we haven't even scratched the surface of. As not only did he attempt to correct grammar in a sentence that was grammatically correct, he did so incorrectly. If I said, you're a tiny bit below average intelligence, there'd need to be an of in there, which you did not offer as a suggestion. And yes, it gets even more pathetic. Because let's just zoom out for a second. Joe Hildebrand has been a writer for decades. If anyone's occupation on earth should have the prerequisites of, I at least possess the spelling and grammar skills of someone in year 5, and or at the very least, I don't attempt to correct grammar incorrectly, you're looking at his very hard to look at face right now. It definitely proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that his book title is inaccurate. Yes, he has a book. You'll never guess what it's called. An Average Joe. I just love how down to earth he is. I can at least see why you think you're quirky and unique, Joe. Only everyone else with that name thought of that title. If we get 40,000 likes on this video, I'm reading extracts from that self-advertised top 10 Australian influential tweeters. Wow. If that's not a badge of honour for a self-hating narcissist, what is? What's the metric here? The fact that you're a Twitter crackhead? You have the same numbers as Michael Finch, dude, and unlike you, it's not his main platform. A viral tweet for you is like a few hundred likes at best. In fact, I suggest you follow Finchy Joe, you could learn a lot from him. Think before you spoke. Clearly he's not your average Joe, but got me good. He's also not your tiny bit below average Joe either. He's your quite a bit below average Joe. Proof? Google him. Watch as much of him as you can bear, which for me was a minute 30 flat. You know how they say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference? Check out these metrics for one of Australia's most influential online presences. 4 likes, 1 dislike. So the fact I hate you seems to mean I have a higher opinion of you than most people who know you exist.
As a veteran dog whisperer from way back, I know that there's actually no substitute for just a loving owner that deserves its animals' respect. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Strong start. Seriously, that is a strong start for Joe. That is a pattern you will see repeated over and over with Hildebrand's brand. Not that he makes shit jokes. That would actually be a step up for him. That would put him on the same pedestal as other ratty, unlikable cunts that seem to be very consciously hiding the fact they have curly hair like Charlie Pickering. He's one step down from that because he's too scared to even properly execute his own shit jokes. So it's not the fact that he's not funny. It's the fact that if you look at his face, he clearly knows he's not funny, but wants the attention so badly that he tries to be anyway. It leaves you feeling both confused and depressed, and boy howdy, that is exactly how I want to start the day, with an existential crisis not about my own life, about Joe's. If you don't already feel that, remember that other layer of sadness we discussed? Prepare your anus to be thoroughly clenched. Connor, enhance the audio.
Come on.
Joe? Why? Please, this is for your own good. I beg you to beg the producers like the snivelling dog you are to cut the audience. It's not doing anyone any favours, mate. Not you, not the people you're subjecting this to. It would be better for everyone if it wasn't triggered in the mind of everyone by a singular, tepid, empathetic, very quiet, oh, that's right. This is terrible, and we all know it.
But even veteran animal handlers like myself can sometimes do with just a little bit of help, so I've decided to ask the professionals. Whoa, stop, don't, no, no. Whoa, stop, don't, no, stop.
We're professional animal trainers and we run a business together, husband and wife we are, training everything from zoo animals, aquarium animals and to a lot of domestic dogs.
Well, my wife can't train me and I can't train my dog, so what do you suggest, Jim?
That's the last thing in the world that's needed. That is the one truly inexhaustible resource on the planet. Indicators that you're a simp. The fact you're trying to put on a brave face in your show's intro and that's the best shot they have of you. The fact you had to pretend that anything Jessica Rowe has ever said is remotely intelligible for years. The fact you seem genuinely nervous about the fact a camera's on you despite being in the biz for decades. Your face in general. Trust me, Joe, you don't need to admit you're a simp. We know. We've always known. You're the grown-up version of that little geek at the back of the class when everyone's agreeing in civics on some obvious point like taxpayer-funded roads are a good idea. You'll pipe up very nervously with some, well, actually, point that's so lame, so unnecessary, so obviously desperate that everyone sort of just awkwardly nods and pretends as if nothing was said. And you've made a living out of that. That's your unique selling point. That is sad. Example. Basically everyone on Earth agrees coronavirus, bad. So what does Joe do? But guys, if the economy's stuffed, isn't that worse? See, it's not even outrageous enough to really provoke any sort of response other than, yeah, cool Joe, anyway. In fact, his works can be sorted into two categories. That's the first category. These articles include a hilarious romp on what you can do on public transport. No one cares, dude. Yet another necessary think piece on Corona in which the thesis appears to be everyone's stupid except me. Ooh, take that world. Joe's called it. In no one's mind except his, he's mad. In short, that entire category makes you think, wow, that man's devoted his entire life to writing things that make the reader mildly pissed off that they even read a couple of sentences of this unimportant fluff shit before inevitably clicking off. That's his art. The second category is, how often do I have to lick Murdoch's nuts to keep on top of my mortgage repayments? Virtually every day? Okay, here we go. These include an article where he goes on to list a bunch of reasons for why we should be grateful to live in Australia. All of them are Labor and union accomplishments, which he never mentions once. In fact, he frequently shits on these organisations in other articles. So that's an indicator that you're reading someone who's his own man. In the same way this cleaner fish is its own fish to this massive predator.
you're all nice and clean now.
10 reasons it's good Labor lost the last election. Oh. This, of course, coming from a man who makes the point numerous times, maybe shutting down the economy will kill more people. Did you ever think about that? But doesn't seem to be fussed that Labor losing the last election means more people in construction will unnecessarily die due to the ABCC. More people died in the bushfires than necessary due to underfunding and the willful ignorance and poor planning of the Liberals. More people will die in the underfunded hospital system, which, if properly funded, may have come in handy during a global pandemic. You never hear Joe make that point though, do you? Guys, did you ever think that what might kill more people than corona is the Liberals' $57 billion cuts to hospitals so they can't treat people with corona? There's something to mull on over the water cooler. Yet Joe couldn't be happier that Labor lost. What a polemicist. In a Murdoch-dominated landscape, one man bravely decided to stand up, face that national cancer square in the eye, and beg for a job. With his unique Hildebrand that only he can offer. Boring and annoying. Wow. Together at last. Bonus, a permanent wince on his face that anyone with a normal level of self-esteem would have outgrown at 15. But not our Joe. He does things his own way. The exact way his employers want him to do things. All for the rare privilege of people sort of recognising his face and being genuinely disgusted by it because it's objectively structurally seedy with a default facial expression to go with it that is constantly searching for approval and advantage. Now before we continue, prediction. Joe's probably got to justify this with, oh, he's just jealous. But Joe, be honest with yourself. Is anyone jealous of your life? Are you? Is your bathroom mirror? Let me walk you through why this isn't jealousy, Joe. If the exact same words were spoken by Carl Stefanovic, Ray Hadley, Alan Jones, I wouldn't have an issue with it. It's the fact that they come from your mouth, specifically. Anything that you say is instantly nullified purely because it comes from you. That's the point of this video. To point out the bleeding obvious. You're a goose. That's it. Just to inform people that you really can judge a book by its cover. There is nothing remotely admirable about you, and it's an expression of my deepest desire that if we must endure dimly being aware of your existence, Channel 10, I'm pitching at you right now. Put Studio 10 out of its misery. It's not going to work. It never has. It's always inadequately limped very far behind its competitors. But if you replace it with just Joe being forced to run through a maze like the rat he is, where at any moment a giant boxing glove could punch him in the face, or he could fall into a pool of feces, and the cheese at the end of the maze that he's searching for day after day is any semblance of dignity whatsoever. However, unlike a rat, he probably won't learn from his mistakes and fall for the decoy dignity trap every single time, a Twitter verification check. It doesn't validate me on the inside, but it certainly does on the outside. I predict you won't just have a ratings winner, you'll have a primetime heavyweight. You can call it the rat race. Normally I'd make that the hashtag I want you to get trending, hoping that 10 executives take it seriously. But the opportunity to make this the hashtag of one of Australia's most influential tweeters is too good to pass up. Hashtag Simple Joe. It sums up everything you need to know about Joe, an emotionally needy dumbass that looks like the rat from Captain Planet. Like this video if you want me to start reading extracts from Average Joe. If Koshi's 101 Ways to Survive 2009 is the Bible, this is the Satanic Verses. There's a reason I chose 40,000 likes, and it's because that seems to be around Studio 10's ratings. Get it to that and I'll start reading it and give you the saddest, most pathetic lines from it. But for now, hashtag Simple Joe. Get it done, because I think if there's one thing both Joe and I can agree on, it's that he's more important than Corona.
Please share and comment below. Comment.
So join Ita, Joe, Jess, Sarah, and Denise.
I'm not going to discuss my farts.
As we beam across Australia from Studio 10.
Whoa, stop! Don't.